Judges doing their level best to do equal right to those appearing before them. That independent judiciary is something we should all be thankful for. So here's a Trump comment that triggered that response.
The Ninth Circuit, we're going to have to look at that because every case, no matter where it is, they file it practically. I mean, practically, for all intents and purposes. They file it in what's called the Ninth Circuit. This was an Obama judge. And I'll tell you what, it's not going to happen like this anymore.
The president was speaking in reference to the judge who temporarily blocked the Trump administration from barring migrants at the southern border from seeking asylum. So, CNN Supreme Court analyst Joan Biskupic is with me now. How rare is this kind of thing?
It is very rare, Brooke. It just doesn't happen.
How rare is this kind of thing?
It is very rare, Brooke. It just doesn't happen. It just doesn't happen.
Exactly right, Katie. The president threw the first verbal punch in his State of the Union speech. He broke with tradition and lashed out at the Supreme Court for its recent decision that said corporations and unions could spend unlimited money on political ads.
It just doesn't happen.
For special interests, including foreign corporations, to spend without limit in our elections. Including foreign corporations, to spend without limit in our elections. Including foreign corporations, to spend without limit in our corporations, to spend without limit in our elections.
It just doesn't happen.
The Ninth Circuit gets obliterated because their opinion is not actually going to hold water.
Well, you know, it's interesting to me that Chief Justice Roberts would attack President Trump and paint him in the light that he's the first to criticize the Supreme Court, because President Obama himself,
Absolutely.
We have tape. Here is President Obama criticizing the Supreme Court. Listen.
Last week, the Supreme Court reversed a century of law that I believe will open the floodgates for special interests, including foreign corporations, to spend without limit in our elections. I'm confident that the Supreme Court will not take what would be an unprecedented, extraordinary step of overturning a law that was passed by a strong majority of a democratically elected Congress.
And look, if Democrats think the judiciary is so independent and they want to be so fair, why were they weaponizing 35, 36-year-old information against Brett Kavanaugh to try to block him from getting to the Supreme Court? They know it. And the president fired back on Twitter. Meanwhile, the last president was in the Rose Garden and was at a State of the Union address going after the Supreme Court. So come on.
Another example of the double standard. They both did the same thing. They both criticized the Supreme Court, but only Donald Trump gets called out by it. Follow their heart and their ideology instead of the Constitution.
Good point.
It just doesn't happen.
You ever seen anything like this before?
I loved it. Are you kidding? I thought it was great. Look, I thought this was a terrific civics lesson on what the Supreme Court is and what the Senate is and what the president's role is. I thought what the president says was entirely appropriate. The Supreme Court is fair game. I also thought what Justice Alito did was totally appropriate.
I live in Miami. This is a community that is full of political exiles, people who have fled dictatorships and human rights abuses in places like Cuba and Nicaragua and Venezuela. And what we are seeing from Donald Trump is the type of things that these strongmen in those countries do. Go after their opponents, try to fabricate prosecutions, try to penalize and punish and make their opponents hurt. I'm not saying he kills them. I'm not saying he beats them up. But certainly prosecution is a weapon that he would use to, extract pain from people.
You have to remember something about Supreme Court justices. They are human beings, and they have feelings about these issues, passionate, intense feelings. And there's also a bit of history between Obama and Alito that's worth remembering here. Because Obama was a senator when Alito came up for confirmation, and Alito and Obama voted against Alito.
Oh, I didn't know that.
January 14th, the week before Obama was inaugurated, he paid a courtesy call on the Supreme Court with Vice President-elect Biden, and 8 of the 9 justices showed up. Who was not there? Samuel Alito.
Yeah, well, to say that they're Obama judges is like saying the sky is blue. It's not really rocket science to figure this out. Look, these are transnational progressives in the Obama mold. That's the reason they were picked. It's the reason they were put on the bench.
Also breaking with tradition, mouthed his disagreement. Yesterday, the Chief Justice, responding to a student's question at the University of Alabama Law School, answered back.
The image of having the members of one branch of government standing up, literally surrounding the Supreme Court, cheering and hollering, while the court, according to the requirements of protocol, has to sit there expressionless, I think is very troubling. To the extent the State of the Union has degenerated into a political pep rally, I'm not sure why we're there.
But today, Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid made it personal. Do you think John Roberts knows or cares how people get elected? And he said the court is out of touch. I think we've had enough of them. I think what we need are people on that bench who have been legislators, people who are lawyers, people who are academics.
Is it smart for the president politically, though, to take on Chief Justice Roberts with that tweet when he's now the ideological center of the court and you need him on some other issues?
Ed, I don't want to blame President Trump here because I think it was unseemly for the Chief Justice to go after the president in the first place, which is clearly what he did. But that said, these are 5-4 cases, most of them, and Trump is giving the Chief Justice a lot of incentive to vote with the left bloc, which if he does, the Supreme Court stops being the place where President Trump can block the judicial activism.
Now, these exchanges are extraordinary, but I think most Americans would not agree with Senator Reid's point that what the Supreme Court needs is legislators as justices. The court is one of the most respected institutions. It's got 61% approval ratings. Congress's approval ratings are now at 15%. Katie?
And Jan, I know this is unprecedented, but it also seems so, unseemly.
Oh, Katie, I mean, to have this kind of real-time back-and-forth exchanges between the president, the majority leader, and the Chief Justice is incredibly unusual and rare. You just don't see this kind of thing happen. Now, legal experts said the Chief Justice was not really out of line. He said he had no problem with President Obama criticizing the court, but it was just the venue that he was taking issue with.
How rare is this kind of thing?
It is very rare, Brooke. It just doesn't happen. And the Chief Justice had to think long and hard about doing this. I think it's significant on a couple levels. And, just when you think of the timing and exactly what he said, because Chief Justice John Roberts has been watching since Donald